The WANS add-ins are Excel add-ins, which are real-time reporting solutions that plug directly into your SAP or your Oracle EBS ERP. For the SAP product, users are able to leverage FICO objects that are defined within their SAP system. They can utilize get balance formulas to pull in summary balance information from any of these specific types of balance functions. And then they've also got the ability to drill down through the line item and document details. So let's take a closer look here at what GL-WAND is doing. On this particular report, I'm comparing month-to-date actuals versus month-to-date budget, year-to-date actual versus year-to-date budget. So all we're doing is we're using a balance formula to retrieve data relative to parameters that are stored here in this report. This gives the users a lot of flexibility in how they create those reports so that they can do dynamic reporting against their source ERP. If, for instance, I wanted to change this to report on a different period, I can simply change my auto calculation mode, move this to the next period, and it will simply go back to SAP and refresh the data relative to that period. This saves users a lot of time in SAP or Oracle when they're exporting data from either one of those source ERPs into Excel. Most times when they do that, they have to reformat data once it gets to Excel. One of the added advantages is having the ability to pull in descriptions for specific objects, because some of the reports out of your source ERP like SAP don't have this description field in the report that is exported to Excel. So this takes users much time to have to reconfigure or reformat that data once they have it in Excel. Now, if we look at a couple of other examples, this is an example of looking at a P&L relative to multiple profit centers. So this could really be any line of your business. You have the flexibility here in setting up company codes or profit centers or cost centers, whatever business units make sense for you to report on. And then again, you can simply just refresh that data by changing the period and looking at the data relative to that particular point in time. One other example would be this cost center variance report. So if we just refresh this sheet, we're going to see data relative to a grouping of cost centers. Now this can be really advantageous if I'm a cost center manager and I want to see a consolidated view of what my costs look like relative to my cost centers. So let's take a look again at this P&L statement. So as you can see, there is data relative to specific GL accounts here, down here as well. So if I was looking to do some more analysis, perhaps maybe I wanted to dig a little deeper into what I'm seeing here relative to my actual data, I might want to drill down into any specific types of balances that I see here. So for instance, I can see that this cost accounting depreciation is a rather large amount. So let's drill down into that by simply double clicking on that cell. Now what this is going to do is it's going to open up two different tabs here in my workbook. The first thing I'm going to see is a criteria tab, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And then we also see this GL balance detail screen. In the criteria tab, you'll note that this is the same as actually coming to this drill criteria, selecting the new GL balance, and entering your criteria. But when executing a drill down from one of our summary reports, the users are able to bring forward all the parameters that were in that specific get balance formula relative to that summary balance. So as you can see here, we've got the parameters, it executed the drill down, and that drill down actually took us to the balance detail drill down screen. Now this screen can be useful if you wanted to see summarized data. What I find most users where they get the most value is by drilling down to the line item details. So what I can do is I can highlight this entire column of execute drill down links, and we'll simply drill to the next level to look at that line item view. So oftentimes when you run reports in SAP, you get a summary balance and you're able to click a couple screens to drill down into information. Now within these drill down templates, there's also the ability to drill down to the source document. In this case, it's an SA or an AF, so these could be FI type documents. You've got the ability to also see attachments. So if you're attaching supporting information to your documents in SAP, you have the ability to execute drill downs to see those attachments. What's also useful in this screen is the ability to configure these template layouts. So under the Edit Report Layout Editor, what you'll see here is that the fields here are going to match the fields that we have up on our report. So the year, the company code, the document number, we all see here. You've got the ability to move these fields around. So for instance, if you wanted the company code to appear at the very beginning of the report, you can simply just drag that field over and place it where you'd like it. Now you've also got the ability to bring in additional SAP fields. So if we look at some of the fields here, there's a long list of what's available for the user. You can use this filter area to filter on those columns to see what's available. And you can also save these as templates. So if you're interested in doing analysis on different types of GL account configurations, you can certainly do that relative to different types of analyses and saving these as templates. Okay, so let's take a look at some other reports because I think it's important to analyze some data that is relevant to the current state of affairs. We know that businesses today are being forced to look at their business in different ways now. With the current crisis going on, it's important now to be looking at things maybe on a daily basis rather than a weekly or a monthly basis. So what we've got here is a cash flow statement report that is looking at balances relative to very specific dates. Okay, so if I wanted to, for instance, change this to a date that is a little closer to the current date, I can simply go and change that date. And we're going to see that all the balances are going to be reflected here looking at roughly the last 5 or 6 days. Now this becomes very useful in understanding how our cash flow is moving and what our liquidity looks like within our organization. So we can use these posting dates to pull in balances relative to this information. Now again, if I wanted to update this, I could run this for a different date. I could run it for a different company code or multiple company codes so long as they have the same currency types. And then we can also drill down to see what's happening at the drill down level. But if we take a look at this report, so this report is much more of a look into the past to see how things have been trending over the course of the last 5 or 6 days. But what if we wanted to be more predictive in our approach to understand where we're going to start to see some collections, for instance, maybe on our trade receivables? What we can do is we can look at another report, which is a daily aging report. So in this particular report, we've outlined some information. I'm going to change this to the current year. And we're going to actually change this as well. So we'll just run it for that same date frame. And then I'm running this for a range of customers here. So I can go in and I can expand this range to run it for multiple customers, or I could run it for a single customer. The other thing that's important is knowing that we're going to look at this as of a certain key date. So we're going to change that key date here to reflect the same date that I had up here. Okay. The only other thing we need to consider for this is that because we're looking at our open items and how that's going to age over the course of the next 7 days or so, I want to make sure that I'm selecting only the open items. Okay, so if we were to go ahead now and execute this drill down, we're going to see an aging template. That will have data relative to specific date buckets. Okay, so as we can see here, we've got these total days. Now the total days are calculated between the key date and the actual due date for calculation in our system. As we continue to scroll down or scroll across here, we're going to see that we've got these date buckets set up. So these are just Excel formulas that are calculating or looking at the number of days and then bucketing the number that we have over here into the appropriate aging bucket. So this becomes very useful for companies to understand not only what does that cash flow look like coming in for the past X amount of days, but looking at it in the future as to where we're going to start to see some benefit on the collection side. So if we actually scroll down to the bottom of this report, we'll see that we've got the aging buckets associated here. So nothing in the current, but then the next day, the next 2 days, and so on. So having this type of template available to you and looking at data in this view, particularly in these critical times, can be a very useful thing for GL Wand users.